Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you guys a build that I actually got to a point I thought this would never make it to YouTube. I have had so many problems with this build. I'm going to go into all of it. I literally have so much to say about what we're going to be creating today, but this is Neverland from Peter Pan. So Peter Pan is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies. I do not create enough content revolving around Peter Pan, and previously, I feel like it's been just based off of lack of what the game is maybe capable of. So, like, Peter Pan has so many aspects to it. You've got the fairies, you've got Peter, you've got the Darling family, you have London, you have Neverland, there's all these locations, mermaids, and all sorts of stuff. So, there's a lot you can do with it, and I don't talk about my love for it enough, but I am a huge fan of Neverland and Peter Pan, and I created the mermaids from the Mermaid Lagoon in a creative sim a couple weeks ago, and of course that will be linked at the end of this one. But I kind of had this idea to try and do Neverland as close as I possibly could, and this is actually an idea that I have attempted before a very long time ago, but I stopped doing it because I realized we really didn't have the in-game items that I was looking for, and I'm really happy that I waited because a little bit after that we actually got Get Famous, and Get Famous comes with a lot of prop type items that are, some of them are non-functional, but they work so well when you're trying to do builds like this that require like very prop type of items, like the ship, for example. That's like a big item that comes with Get Famous. So we're going to be doing the whole thing today. The entire island, all the water, Mermaid Lagoon, the Jolly Rodger, the Lost Boys Tower, Pixie Hollow, the Indian Village, everything I could fit into this, what seems to be small in the spectrum of this build, 64 by 64 lot, and man, would I have liked a bigger lot for this one. We don't have a bigger lot in game, so obviously that's not possible, but this would have been the one where I would have loved just a little bit more room to play with the terrain. So, to get into the build, first of all, I am not the first person to do this build, so go and check out some other people's Neverland builds if you would like. However, I think the first person that's attempting to do this with the terrain manipulation, and I think that's where it really became the issue. So Neverland as an island has a very distinct shape, and it's something I've always remembered as a child, so that was really important to me to recreate. And the back end of it is very like hilly, mountainous, lots of like tall, I think what's supposed to be mountains, but also very green. And then it has a couple of lagoons. It has the one major one right in the middle where the Jolly Rodger usually sits, and it has a waterfall. And then there is a separate kind of plateau that's a little bit elevated off to the left where the Indian Village is located. And you can actually go and look up where everything is located. So I tried to go off of maps for this. However, it did change here and there because Peter Pan was made a long time ago, and they made some spin-offs of it afterwards for Disney Channel, so the actual like locations of everything changed here and there, but I went off of an actual photo, so I was trying to keep everything in its general place and make sure I had all of the correct cuts and gives and bends to the land in order to put everything in the correct spaces. So one of the biggest issues that came about with this, and this is something that nobody ever talks about, and probably because nobody has this problem except for me, but I don't know if there is a limit as far as how many items you can put on a lot per lot before the game just cannot handle it anymore. And if there is a limit, I've reached it in this build because this build crashed so many times. It gave me so many problems. I cannot even describe. Like, this was a build I've been working on for probably the past week, but I would say that it wouldn't have taken me this long if I didn't have to spend so much time trying to get my game to work after doing this. So I think the terrain and the shape that I was going for, combined with the water and combined with the fact that I wasn't happy with the fact that you can't just paint the terrain and make it look all nice and pretty and green. There's actually like a weird thing about it. So my solution was to take bushes and put them all over the hills to completely cover them and give it that deep forest or tree effect all over. But I must have used hundreds and hundreds of bushes. It took me the better part of the day to actually cover the landscaping in bushes. So immediately upon me finishing that, my game crashed. And then I spent almost an entire day fixing my game, cleaning out my entire computer, getting rid of all of my mods, all of my custom content, uninstalling everything off of Steam, trying to uninstall my reshade, getting rid of basically every single thing on my computer so that it could be at full capacity for this build. And even when I did that, I had to start a new Sims game. I had to keep going in and out of it multiple times. And finally, I got to a point where it was stable, but I would not say that this is a build that most people's computer is going to be able to handle. And I was a little bit disappointed by that fact because I built it with a little bit of playability in mind, but I feel like this is one of those ones where maybe people can just admire it from afar. I have put it on the gallery for download under my Origin ID, theallegedsimmer, all one word. No custom content on the whole build, and it is actually also, I put it in for Smaj's tropical builds for Smaj as well, so I'm really hoping to get featured in his video because I would love to see his thoughts on this. So please go download it actually, or favorite it so that the numbers go up and he sees it. But yeah, this is a big build. I don't recommend it for most people's computers. I have an Aurora, an Alienware Aurora, very high capacity, never had a problem with The Sims up until now, and my computer could not handle this. So laptops beware, most people's computers beware, but it is available if you want to take the risk. I don't think it will literally break your game. I think you just probably will have a lot of crashing and then find that you can't use the lot, but we can admire it from my video. So to get into the actual build a little bit more, we are actually decorating the Jolly Rodger. So with moving around this lot, I think you have to keep in mind that you are going to have to teleport quite a bit. A lot of the stairs are non-functional, a lot of the locations are non-functional just because of the given nature of the lot and whatnot. So keep that in mind to teleport here and there if you would like to actually attempt to play on this lot. But the Jolly Rodger is the ship from, that's Captain Hook's ship and his crew, and I didn't really go off of reference photos for this. We have a set of pieces that combined can make a ship, and I use those, obviously put them together above the land, and then I thought maybe to give it a little bit more depth, to do a room, to do like the captain's deck and everything, captain's quarters, bring a room downstairs into the water and fully decorate it. So my idea was just to keep it very old-fashioned looking, do lots of darker wood tones, anything older, and then obviously they're pirates, so they probably venture all over, they collect lots of things. Treasure means a lot to pirates, so you're gonna have a lot of art, weird sculptures, treasure chests, books, things like that. So this is really just a cluttered up little office type of situation where Captain Hook would go and obviously chart the next voyage and keep all of his specific treasures. And it's also usually like a captain's quarters is where they would sleep as well. However, I did not put a bed here. The majority of the bedrooms are actually going to be over at the Lost Boys house, which we will get into later in the video. But there's actually a lot of shout outs to the movie in these mini builds inside each of the bigger builds, being that, like, I didn't go off of reference, but I've seen the movie so many times that I knew there were certain things I wanted to have. And in Peter Pan, there's one scene where Captain Hook gets a hold of Tinkerbell and he grabs her and he puts her inside of what's kind of like a lantern and locks her in there. And that has to do with, obviously, the storyline. She's not able to go warn Peter the way that she was attempting to. And he keeps her there and holds her hostage. So I put a lantern type item in the corner, kind of had it hanging off of a makeshift pole, which is, it's one of those poles that you get, I think, from toddler stuff, maybe children's stuff, and hang that from the ceiling to give that, like, hanging effect. But then just kind of cluttering it up with lots of debug, lots of treasure type of items, anything that was a little bit out of the ordinary or maybe looks like it comes from a different part of the world. And that also comes in reference from, like, other Peter Pan renditions. I've also read the book, Peter Pan, the original one. So Captain Hook travels beyond Neverland, and that's kind of how the entire story comes into play, depending on which rendition you actually read and stuff like that. So there's clearly been voyages of other places, and we've got lots of jewels and stuff from all of those given trips, including food, including rare objects, collectibles, and things like that, keeping it rather messy. I think that when it comes to pirates, it's more the fact of just like having the treasure and maybe not necessarily enjoying the treasure as much as like knowing that you have it and it has value. And when you do get to see the little bits of Captain Hook's little headquarters, his little captain's quarters, it is, or comes across as, rather messy. And obviously this is also a little bit Pirates of the Caribbean inspired, where they do show the inside of pirate ships quite frequently. So I thought about all of that. I also wanted to include a fireplace. I don't know how realistic that is for like an old classic ship, but it seemed like the type of thing that a captain might have versus some of the other shipmates, and a couple of extra places to sit, have a conversation with somebody else, or a couple of places to have the captain sit and read a book and, you know, chart the next voyage and whatnot. This is a tropical island, so there's going to be lots and lots of tropical plants. I would say that plants actually make up 99% of this build. I wanted to decorate the water, tropical water, especially, you know, like Pacific water, Caribbean water, things like that. Although Neverland is like its own thing that is completely, supposedly the way I think about it at least, outside of the world. It is still shown as being very tropical. And when I think about that, I think about lots of plants in the water. So it was important to me to not only have lots of greenery on land, but under as well. And then we are moving on to the Mermaid Lagoon, which I was the most excited to decorate. However, it doesn't actually have a whole lot to it. So the scene in Peter Pan, I think it's one of the first things they do when they arrive to Neverland, is to visit the Mermaid Lagoon. And if you want to play here and you want some mermaids to go with it, I've already done that for you. So like I said, I'll link that video at the end as well. But for the lagoon itself, the only thing I really wanted is I just wanted it to be its own little area that seemed to have some sort of magic to it. And in some of the photos, it was showing like a rainbow that seemed to go over the top of Mermaid Lagoon. And this is why, again, that I'm so glad I waited to do this build until Get Famous came out, because that's one of the items we actually got in Get Famous. So there's this beautiful like rainbow statue, and it is meant for like commercial making and props and stuff like that, but I thought it would be fun to do a literal interpretation and just put it over the top of Mermaid Lagoon and give it that very like grand feel. There's also lots of plants growing there, maybe some ones that are more colorful and ones that are more like water type. And then a lot of the scenes are the mermaids actually like washing their hair in the waterfalls and stuff like that. So rather than create another waterfall from scratch, which I actually did in the prior lagoon over with the Jolly Rodger, this is its own separate thing. I wanted it to be like slightly different and also slightly luxurious. So I'm using the Spa Day waterfalls, I believe they are, and I covered them in plants to give them that more organic look, but they are not actually, you know, built into the land maybe, the way that the larger waterfall is over in the lagoon with the Jolly Rodger. So those are a little bit more like streamlined, straight down waterfalls, and I did want that different look to them. And lots of seashells and stuff like that. And the seashells are actually an item you cannot spawn in, to my knowledge, and they're not available in debug. They're like collector items. So somebody else asked me about this, how you actually get them and how I've been getting them. You can go on the gallery, search for bedrooms, and then type in shell, and you will get all of those items. I use them as decorations, and then using some stickers in the water and stuff like that to bring some animal life and like turtles and give that effect overall. We're actually going to jump back to Mermaid Lagoon at the end just to give it a couple of final touch-ups and do some stuff for lighting later on in the video. So this is the Lost Boys treehouse, and this is a very interesting treehouse in that it is a literal tree that they live in, rather than maybe what you would actually think a treehouse to be, like a house inside of a tree or up in a tree. This in the movie, it's shown that they have little doors and windows that they open and they crawl into the tree and then almost slide down into an underground house. So we're building the majority of the home underground. This is also also where Peter's bedroom is. So we have Peter's bedroom, and then there's actually a bunch of the Lost Boys, but there's primarily, I think, 6 or 7 in the movie that are shown. So the way that I wanted to do this was color coordinate, obviously. So Peter has his own little distinct corner of the house, and his room is off by itself a little bit. He's got a little bit more room, and then he obviously has the green bed, and then each of the prominent Lost Boy characters from the movie are getting their own beds that are color coordinated to whichever character they're supposed to be. The only major thing I wanted to make sure about the Lost Boys treehouse was that we had the big scraggly tree upstairs on the mainland, and I wanted to put a couple of windows off on it to give that look like almost they could pull the windows up or to the side and jump in down into the tree. So I managed to do that, actually, and later on we're going to add some more lights and stuff upstairs. And then downstairs in the movie, it's just shown, like, made out of dirt walls, made out of a dirt floor, and lots of trees and branches and, like, more of the actual land coming into the house. So I did a lot of plants, a lot of moss, brought some actual trees in upstairs. It's the same tree that we're using from the mainland to size it down a little bit, bring it down, and give that branchy look all throughout. But yeah, adding some of those plants that we got from, I believe, Seasons, possibly. I don't know. They all get mixed together at this point. But the other major thing I knew I wanted to have in Peter's room, there's one scene where Tinkerbell is having a moment where she is not happy with Peter, so she goes off to her own bed, and it's displayed as being somewhere near Peter's room, and it's almost like this cave in the wall where maybe the wall has its own, it's a sand wall or it's a dirt wall, so it juts in and it has its own little area, and she goes in there and there's lots of leaves and twigs and branches and things, and that's her bed. So I wanted to do something like that, and I knew I wanted to, but I wasn't really sure how I was going to pull that off. And Fitness Stuff actually has this, it's supposed to be like an architectural piece, and it's a sculpture with a hole in the middle, and then it's got grass and moss on the top. So I believe I sized that down, kind of moved it up on the wall a little bit, and then put the little fairy statue in it, sized all the way down, to, you know, pay remembrance to that scene and pay homage to that a little bit. And doing, like, lots of toys, lots of children's stuff, lots of things that kids would like and need. It's very messy. It's obviously, like, one of the themes of the movie is that they don't have a mother. So they don't have anybody to tell them to clean up after themselves. They don't have anybody to tidy up. They don't have anybody to do those kinds of things that maybe a mother would do for some younger children. So everything's a little bit mismatched, a little bit out of place. Beds are crooked. The carpets are crooked. The cabinets in the kitchen don't match one another. Nothing's really that clean, and it has this overall very cluttered, very busy look and feel to it, and obviously it would, considering that there are so many children living down here, and it seems like a very small area given the amount of people that would be there, and the fact that, like, all of them live in one big room versus each one of them having their own, like, little given room or area. Everything's kind of all together. So you do get this very busy look, but that's definitely what I was going for, and a little bit overwhelming, but you can kind of figure out everything and where characters are supposed to go and stuff like that. And this is also going to have a small kitchen, but a kitchen and a bathroom, just in case, like I said, there was anybody that did want to play with this and use the actual characters. I wanted you to have at least one functional kitchen and bathroom somewhere on this lot that was available so that you could do so. And this is probably one of the more accessible areas of Neverland. I don't actually think you would have to teleport down here. I did do stairs from the upstairs, and they are hidden behind the hollow tree, but we would have to see, because I haven't even attempted to playtest this lot. As of me recording this video, it was just a feat in and of itself to get this far. And if you've noticed that I have been saving a lot during this build, that's because it was crashing while I was building, so I was trying to constantly save in order to make sure I could, you know, keep going and progress to the next part of the build. So, and I did lose it a few times, but usually it wasn't anything major, luckily for me. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of that through the remainder of the video even, so I apologize for that, but, you know, it might just be a cursed lot. I'm not really sure what was going on. It didn't seem like too many items to me, but like I said, I think the combination of the terrain manipulation, majorly, the water, and then all of the plants I was using, and then trying to build underground, it's just like max capacity for The Sims, so I don't think the game was prepared for me to do anything like this, and maybe it was my computer. Hopefully a couple of you will be able to enjoy it, but I'm just glad that this video is going to go out, period, and I can say that I did this build at the very least. So yeah, Mermaid Lagoon, I was attempting to play with doing the water like a pink color and using some of those spa day tiles to bring in some brighter colors and rainbows and colors and stuff over there, but it doesn't really look that great for the actual water. It just gives this muddied look, so we're actually going to change that later on. And then moving over to the Indian village, as is described in the movie, this was a bit tricky as well, and you would think maybe not so much, but the problem is that when you do terrain manipulation, there is a big issue, and one of the reasons why I don't use it very frequently, with items floating. So items each have their own like specific amount of tiles, and if you're trying to place them down on an area where any of those tiles, let's say it's an item with 5 tiles, if you're trying to place a 5-tile item down and not all 5 of the tiles underneath it are flat, it will float above the surface of the ground. And we don't want that. We want it to actually touch the ground. So I found these tents, and some of those items are from Island Living, and had to play with the terrain quite a bit to get it flat over here. I still wanted to have that height and that kind of grand walkway up to this little plateaued area, because it was supposed to look like that. It was shown like that in the photo, so I was trying to keep that general shape to it. However, I did need it to be completely flat up top in order for everything to sit down properly. So I did have to go back in with the terrain, which was a big issue and caused a lot of problems because the game just wasn't ready for me to be doing that at this point, especially with how many more items I had added to the lot. So that, but I did eventually get it to a place where I could put a couple of the tents, a couple of the little fire items. Those are actually functional. If you were to turn this lot on and like play it, there are so many things that I have brought to life. There are fish all over the place. There's waterfalls, there's fountains, there's fire pits, there's all sorts of stuff. I've really like made this to be so fun and interesting, and something so different for your Sims, but like I said, it's up to you, whatever you decide to do. And yeah, I did get it to a place that I was happy with. It's not exactly what I wanted, but it's close enough, and we're gonna have to take it at this point, this deep into the build. And lastly, I had this little area left. So in a lot of the photos, it was being shown as almost like a second part to the Indian village. However, I made the creative decision to turn it into Pixie Hollow. So one of the things that's kind of come out of Peter Pan is that there are so many Tinkerbell movies, and Tinkerbell has described that Pixie Hollow is located either in Neverland or near Neverland, and rather than doing the same idea twice, I wanted to bring a new idea into it, and so I decided to use this remaining area to do a homage to Pixie Hollow. So Pixie Hollow, I looked up photos of that as well separately. One of the big things about it is that it has this beautiful tree with lanterns hanging out of it that the fairies live in, and we actually have an item like that in game. And another major thing with it is that it's big about like elements and seasons, and there's different types of fairies. So there's like ones that are for the spring and the summer and the fall. So I wanted to kind of play into that as well. And I decided to make this huge circle on the ground, and I wanted it to feel like very organic once again, lots of colors, lots of plants, and section it off almost color-wise and a little bit seasonally as well for the different types of fairies, and then put the tree in the middle as like the grand center focal point of Pixie Hollow. And I did think about possibly doing something underground as well, but seeing as that they're fairies, they actually live in like tiny tree houses all over the main tree, and then some of them in the actual plants and things like that. So the size differentiation didn't really make sense for the actual build, so I decided to just, you know, limit it at that and do the big tree and have that little area for Tinkerbell. And it's a very different spot in Neverland, and it's the only difference that I really like chose creatively to go outside of what was actually being shown in photos. But I'm really glad that I did, because I think that it ties the whole thing together and makes it my own in a way. And it was also really important that Pixie Hollow looked lovely at night. So I decided to put lots of those like flower candles all over the outside of it. And it's also got the lanterns underneath. So for the screenshots at the end, that is going to be shown to you guys during the nighttime, because I think it's the prettiest part of Neverland in the night. But I did kind of think about everything, and I did go ahead and go around and like light everything up a little bit. I'm not sure how much of that I actually kept in the video, but we are going to be moving to the screenshots any moment here. We are actually coming to the end. So stay tuned for those, and let me know what you thought of this build. Would you like to see more Peter Pan stuff? Should I try to make a Peter Pan and a Wendy, do Max's match? I did one a long time ago, but I would love to do it again. Let me know what you guys would like to see, and thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.